Welcome to Political Beatdown. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by the one and only Michael Cohen. We've got a lot to discuss, and let's just get right into it. Donald Trump filed an opposition to Michael Cohen's motion to dismiss Trump's baseless $500 million lawsuit that Trump filed against Cohen in the Southern District of Florida, Miami division. And Trump's lawyer says we need to take the temperature down a little bit. I kid you not. This is an article that was just published from Law and Crime, like right before we went live. I was cracking up, Cohen, when I read this. It says, Trump's attorney scorns ex-fixer Michael Cohen's caustic defense in $500 million lawsuit. Known for attacking his adversaries in litigation, campaign rallies, and social media broadsides, former President Donald Trump offered a surprising argument in federal court that you, Michael Cohen, the other guy, is being too caustic, he says. He goes, we need to take the temperature down. Donald Trump filed a motion in federal court saying Cohen needs to take the temperature down.
Yeah, you can't make this up. And Salty, if you by chance happen to have my response back, that's in the same article. There you go. The irony should not be lost here that only after several days post the Manhattan DA's indictment of Donald does he elect to file this baseless lawsuit against me. This is an old and ill-advised strategy from the Trump playbook that he has used for many decades. With all the legal troubles at Donald's doorstep, the last place he wants to find himself is before my counsel at a deposition providing testimony under oath. You can't make this stuff up, Ben. I mean, this is just absolutely fantastic that, they're now complaining that my lawyers use certain terms, in the motion to dismiss that seems to offend Alejandro Brito, counsel for Donald or Donald, in terms of our response, things like baseless. I mean, things like, inappropriate. I mean, there's a whole slew of them that's written in the article. If you have a chance, you cannot make this stuff up. This is a guy who I believe was in New Hampshire over the course of the weekend. And if you had a moment to waste and you chose to then watch the nonsense that came out of Donald's mouth at this rally, the vitriol, the hatred, the finger pointing, the accusations that this guy threw out at so many people in a rally, that he has the audacity, the absolute sheer gall to turn around and to put in before the esteemed judge in my case to say Cohen, by and through his counsel, needs to bring down the temperature from this already high-profile case. This is unprecedented.
I got a question for you, Cohen, though. Are you going to bring down the temperature, or are you going to raise the heat?
Look, the heat has been raised by Donald. See, that's the whole thing. What I'm doing is I'm responding in accordance with the allegations that were brought by Brito on behalf of Donald. And one of the things that I said when I had first gotten this complaint is Brito better be careful, because if history shows anything, is that Donald has no affection toward any attorney. Look at what he just did to Milquetoast McEnany, right? Spelled wrong, of course. Look at what he did to Kayleigh McEnany, who went out there every single day looking to defend him on statements that he's made that are completely just inaccurate, that they're lies. And now he's attacking her. Why? Because she said that he was 24 points up and he believes that he's 32 points up. And so that's a reason to attack her. So think about what he's going to do to Brito when the judge comes back with a decision on this specific case that may not be in his favor. The first person he throws under the bus, well, Alejandro, let me know how it feels when those back wheels run right over your head, because that's what's going to happen. Donald will point the finger and blame you for everything in that complaint.
It's why it's so important, though, that we read the court filings because the propaganda spewed by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans that they their right-wing echo chamber does not match the reality of what they're actually saying in court filings, right? So Donald Trump is making all these posts about you on his social media platform, playing the tough guy, suing you for $500 million. You were hanging out, living your life, already very stressful based on all the threats and harassment that you have to deal with, just trying to enjoy your Michael Cohen day. Then you start getting all of these phone calls that you are being sued for $500 million based on these baseless accusations against you. You now have to defend yourself. You have to hire lawyers who file a motion. And then what Donald Trump says in his court filing that was just filed is, Cohen's got to calm down. I mean, the gaslighting, Cohen's got to calm down here. I mean, Cohen's out of control. Let's focus. Let's take the temperature down. A little bit too caustic right here by Michael. Are you kidding me? You got sued for $500 million.
Yeah, but it's more than just the lawsuit. Look, everyone is entitled to file a lawsuit if in fact they feel or believe that they have been aggrieved. I'm all for that. However, if you read the actual complaint, it is fraught with bogus allegations, with the most vicious and vitriolic statements that a person could put into a complaint designed to attract media attention to attack me individually. It's not about the case. It was all about me. It was like Mean Girls. It was like the Burn book, from Mean Girls. That's all that it was. And now, as we respond to it with legitimate statements and legitimate terminology used in order to, counter the the complaint and to move to dismiss some of these causes of action that are frivolous. He doesn't like the term frivolous, which is crazy because that's the statement that needs to be pled in order for a judge to make a determination whether or not that cause of action remains, gets dismissed with or without prejudice, and or gets required to be repled by counsel. Right? That's the term that you use: frivolous, frivolity, etc. He doesn't like that statement. He doesn't like the use of that term. And I really don't think that the judge is going to take kindly to the, behavior and the actions of, plaintiff and plaintiff's counsel.
The terms that you used, frivolous, vexatious, those are the same terms that a federal judge, Judge Middlebrooks, in the same district, in the Southern District of Florida, used in sanctioning Donald Trump and Alina Habba close to $1 million a few months back, calling Donald Trump's lawsuit frivolous, calling him a vexatious litigant.
Calling it
You're simply restating what a federal judge has said in an opinion sanctioning Donald Trump.
And if you read, Ben, if you read the complaint, it is scattershot. And the term scattershot, of course, referring to like what you would do if you were holding a shotgun, right? Where it just sprays out. And that's what they did. It's the proverbial, throwing the pasta on the wall and seeing what sticks. That's all that they did. And it's not a high temperatured terminology that's used. It was a scattershot lawsuit that was, just ham-fisted, which is exactly what it is. Oh, he doesn't like these terms. Well, why don't you go back to the complaint and start reading some of the things that you stated in this complaint that required us to respond back to the nonsensical, causes of action and averments that you claim in this complaint.
At the same time, Donald Trump's lawyer is in federal court in the Southern District of Florida saying, Cohen, please, man, tone it down, Cohen, tone it down. This is what he's posting on his social media platform, presumably about you. I mean, the ranting and ravings of a lunatic here, I can barely even decipher what he's talking about.
I mean, let's break this down for a second.
Let
Wow.
me read
Right?
it and
All
then I'll let
caps.
you
Can
break
you
it.
imagine this? Wow.
He
Legal
goes,
experts are
wow.
saying,
Here's
wow.
what he goes. He goes,
Legal
wow.
experts are saying,
Exclamation point.
right?
Legal experts are saying, here, you want to read it in Donald Trump's
Yeah,
voice? I'll
right.
let you.
Could you imagine? Legal experts are saying that DA Alvin Bragg will be immediately forced to drop his weak and disparaged case against Trump, of course, third person, because his top investigator, Jeremy Rosenberg, corruptly colluded with a disgraced, disbarred, and convicted felon and perjurer in attempting to frame me with a crime that doesn't even exist. You know, there is not a single word in that sentence that is accurate. It's truly incredible to me. First of all, yeah, I am disbarred. So there is a term, that and convicted felon. Yeah, perjurer. All right, maybe if that's the way that he wants to play it, but it has nothing to do. He doesn't even know what the hell he's talking about when it comes to Jeremy Rosenberg. I mean, this whole thing is pure and utter bullshit and nonsense. And as far as I'm concerned, it has nothing to do. It had nothing to do with Donald. I have no idea, to be very honest with you, Ben. I don't even know what this was even about. I found this out the same time that everybody else did when it hit the press. I mean, this is just crazy.
Look, so if these are apparently accusations against you, and you clearly not only do not understand it, but like have no clue of even the realm within which this is even potentially exists in, even as a conspiracy theory. When I read it, I mean, I assumed that that's how he disparages you. So, but I'm like, I have no clue what in the world he is talking about. And here's the issue: these MAGA Republicans are funneling some of the most bizarre and dangerous conspiracy theories each and every day. They're not living in the reality. They are living in their fascistic dystopia where they are trying to just destroy people's lives each and every day. I mean, we talked about this yesterday on the podcast with James Comer, who's saying that he wants to hold Christopher Wray, the FBI director who was appointed by Donald Trump. Christopher Wray is a Republican, and James Comer, the Republicans want to hold Christopher Wray in contempt because Christopher Wray had showed them a document that was laundered through Rudy Giuliani from a foreign asset that is a baseless allegation that even Bill Barr rejected. It is a discredited allegation, but to the James Comers and the MAGA Republicans, they now want to say, well, actually, the FBI source here is a very credible. After disparaging the FBI, they go, this FBI source that has this information is very credible. It's not the issue of the FBI source. It's the person who told the FBI agent the information. It's a false allegation funneled through Giuliani, and they just want to defame and disparage. They make crap up every single day.
So here, look, one of the things that at least you and our brigaders and those that follow me on social media or Mea Culpa podcast or wherever, one thing that you know about me, I'm not into this bullshit. I'm not into letting Donald have the last nasty word when it comes to any of this shit. So one of the funnier ones that I put out on my social media on Twitter and elsewhere, but specifically on Twitter, Salty, if you got it, yeah, two can play this game. That's coming from the draft dodging, golf cheating, king of Chapter 11s, twice impeached, one term, civilly liable, sex offending, and criminally indicted, more to come, Mandarin Mussolini. Your statement about me means nothing. Have a wonderful day, right? I can only imagine when those that are around him, because what they do is they then follow me, and then they will print this out and say, Donald, look at what Mike Cohen said, look what Mike Cohen said about you, as they hand him the piece of paper showing this. I can assure you everything that I said in there is accurate. All right, and we all know it's accurate because That's exactly what we see every day in the news, right? And I'm sure I missed a few, right? So if anybody knows of a few more that I need to add, no problem. That'll be in my next round. But I'm not going to sit back and be a punching bag to this piece of shit. Fuck that. No chance. You know what? You want to play that game? You want to sit there, oh, convicted perjurer? Yeah, fuck nut. How about the fact that I was a convicted perjurer because you, Jay Sekulow, Abby Lowell, Ty Cobb, Ivanka, Jared, etc. Everybody sat there and they all worked on this statement that I gave to the Senate Permanent Select Committee. And let me not forget to remind everybody once again, because I will continue to say it over and over and over again until everybody knows it the same way that I do off the top of your tongue, that what I lied to Congress about, what made me into a convicted perjurer, was the number of times that I told the Senate Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence how many times I spoke to Donald about the failed Trump Tower Moscow real estate project. I stated in my statement the number 3 that I talked to Donald about it 3 times because that's the number that he wanted, a de minimis number, when in fact the true answer was the 2 of us spoke about it 10 times. That's what caused the perjury, the conviction, where I pled, to lying under 1001 violation. All right. If that makes me a perjurer, yeah, at least I'm not civilly liable for sexual assault, with more to come and more indictments that, literally coming down the pike.
And here's the thing, like these lies in this MAGA Republican quest for power, I mean, it has real world consequences. This is life or death stuff. I mean, I think many of us were waking up to this news that Russia had destroyed a dam in Ukraine and caused serious flooding, a major humanitarian disaster. And this, at the same time, you have MAGA Republicans funneling in Vladimir Putin disinformation about President Biden, giving comfort to Vladimir Putin. And this is, you have Donald Trump at this so-called town hall that he held as well over the past few days, where he basically called for, this is what he says about NATO. I won't try to characterize him. Just watch what he says here. Play this clip.
In the meantime, we're paying for most of NATO. So they took advantage of us on trade. I got them. First of all, I traded. A lot of the trade things are much different now, but it would have been really much different. COVID interrupted us, unfortunately, but it was going to be much different. We did a good job in trade. But more importantly, we got them to pay hundreds of billions of dollars. And, the money that we got, that money went to, this is why they have money right now in NATO to fight Russia. They have money. They didn't have any money. They were going bust. NATO was going to break up. Now, as to whether or not it should break up, let's not talk about that. But we were spending money on NATO to protect Europe, and they were taking advantage of us on trade.
And it's particularly...
How the fuck does Sean Hannity sit there and not just laugh? That there's not one part of that statement that is actually accurate. He didn't find hundreds of billions of dollars, right, for NATO in order to provide, to Ukraine. I mean, he doesn't even understand. Could you imagine? For 4 years, this ass clown sat in the Oval Office. He was the leader of the free world. He doesn't even understand what NATO is about. He doesn't understand the budget. He doesn't understand what they do and the necessity of NATO. He wants to disband NATO. I mean, I can't imagine Sean Hannity. You know what? Fuck you, Sean, for sitting there and not saying anything. Hold the man accountable for exactly what he needs to be held accountable for, and that's lying. Bold-faced fucking lying to the American people. That's not what happened. And that's not what you did, and that's not what you want to do. He wants to disband NATO, and that was his whole goal. Oh, I want everybody to pay X, Y, and Z. The entire budget of NATO is not hundreds of billions of dollars. What is he talking about? And Sean's sitting there and saying nothing, and then trying to figure out how to move him off topic so that they can get to something like maybe the Mar-a-Lago flood of the pool or something like that, that he actually knows something about, or like, what temperature burger he likes. Everything else is just fucking winged it. And right off the cuff, and none of it has any sense. None of it is accurate, and none of it is for the benefit of you and me and this country. It's for the benefit of Donald. That's the crazy thing. And for Sean to say absolutely nothing, to sit there like a fucking lunk on a log, fuck you, Sean.
And we're recording this on the anniversary of D-Day. This is what President Biden posted earlier today. The troops who stormed the shores of Normandy 79 years ago represent the greatest generation in our history. They answered the free world's call at its greatest hour of need. They kept the ultimate faith to our country and democracy, and we must keep our sacred obligation to them. This was Donald Trump's post. Election interference. Don't let it happen! Exclamation point. That's what they both posted earlier.
Can you go back to that? Because there's a point that I want to make about Donald's. Take a look what you're talking about. 4,250 retweets with 15,000 likes. Far from the millions that he was getting when he was on Twitter, right? With the millions and millions of retweets and posts and likes and so on. That's Truth Social or Untruth Social, has no followers. That company, like all the others that Donald had, put together in the past, all will be soon out of business. They already are running out of money. At the end of the day, all right, Donald is a failure. He was a failure as a president. He's a failure as a human being. Where the fuck was Captain Bonespur when these people were fighting, putting their lives on the line for America, for American democracy? You know where he was? He was off there dancing, right? And I love it, with his happy dance, as Bill Maher said. I think it was Bill Maher. Yeah, Bill Maher said that he looks like he's jerking off two guys at the same time. All right, that's what Donald was doing while these soldiers, these brave, men and women were there fighting for our country to save our democracy. And 79 years later, what is Donald doing? Captain Bonespur, he's out there trying to wreck democracy again. He's a guy who doesn't believe in the Constitution. All he believes in is himself and whatever craziness comes to mind first. Shame on him. On
And
today,
70
not to honor right now the men and women of our military. Oh man, oh man, oh man.
And 79 years to the day of the anniversary of D-Day, we have Russian forces, just as the brave and courageous Ukrainian forces seem to have launched their counter-offensive. Russia then engaged in blowing up the dam, flooding the Kherson region. They destroyed the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant earlier this morning, causing massive damage and destruction. We woke up seeing those videos, and the MAGA Republican talking points, though, over and over again, are basically, how do we not just appease Vladimir Putin, they want to promote Putin. This is Vivek Ramaswamy, who's the sweetheart of the modern day MAGA Republican movement. This is what he said in an interview a few days back. Play this clip.
End the Ukraine war on peaceful terms that, yes, do make some major concessions to Russia, including freezing the current lines of control in a Korean War-style armistice agreement.
Ukraine really wouldn't want to do.
Which Ukraine wouldn't want to do, and also a permanent commitment not to allow Ukraine to enter NATO.
He was asked a follow-up on another show, and this is what Vivek Ramaswamy said about that statement. Play this clip.
At the beginning, Vivek, you said that what you're really concerned about is this Sino-Russia partnership.
Yes.
And you need to drive a wedge through it. You said yesterday that one of the ways you would try to drive a wedge through it is to make some concessions to Putin on Ukraine. You brought up Neville Chamberlain. He tried to do that with Hitler. Didn't work out very well. Why would it work out any better with Putin?
Well, this is the equivalent of if we could go back and actually disrupt the German-Japan alliance. Boy, would we have wanted to do that at a time we could. So the way I look at this, John, is it's a reverse maneuver of what Nixon did with Mao. Mao was not some hero that we aspire to, some paragon of democracy. I don't trust Putin any more than Nixon trusted Mao, except this time Putin is the new Mao. Disrupt that alliance, move from a bilateral international order right now that favors China to a trilateral international order where there's no allies between the three major nuclear superpowers.
But you talk about making concessions with Russia on
Yes.
Ukraine and maybe letting Putin have Donbass. What makes you think he would stop there?
Well,
Because almost every military analyst that we have talked to on this program says you give him Donbass, you give him time, he regroups, he rearms, and then he goes after the rest of the country.
So a carrot and a stick. I think the number one thing they need to do is exit the treaty that they have with China, dating back to 2001. No more joint military exercises or otherwise. And if he reneges, then we go back on the things that we said we would agree to give him, which is what we're saying is no Ukraine admission to NATO. Freeze the current lines of control. That's a Korean War-style armistice agreement. But if Putin reneges on that, now we're talking about a maximum pressure campaign in terms of economic sanctions. Now we're talking about immediate admission of Ukraine to NATO. And that'll be worse off for him. And Putin has no incentive because right now he doesn't like being Xi Jinping's little brother in that relationship. So if we're actually reopening economic relations with Russia, if we're actually committing that Ukraine's never going to become part of NATO and freeze those lines of control, yes, those are major concessions, but it's in service of a bigger U.S. interest, and that is disrupting that partnership between Russia and China.
You see, it's a carrot and a stick, Michael. I mean, the guy's an idiot.
Idiot's a nice word to call him. This is a fucking imbecile who's sitting, again, as a member of Congress. Look, he knows nothing about Russia, and he knows even less about Ukraine. Putin doesn't stop. Putin's not stopping simply because he's taking over just the Donbass area. He's going to continue to move into the breadbasket of Ukraine to take the whole thing over. His sole goal, Putin's sole purpose, is to reunite the former Soviet Empire while he's still alive so that he could be the next czar. What is this fucking ass clown even talking about? This Jimmy Neutron jerk-off that sits looking as if he knows what he's saying. He has no goddamn clue. And for the fact that, good for Fox News, every now and then I watch Fox News is beginning to do this. They're not allowing people like Ramaswamy here to turn around and just to speak without, without being questioned and without, their, holding the line because this Fox journalist fully understands, after speaking to dozens and dozens of different military experts, that's not who Putin is. That's not what Putin wants. And you think that by turning around and giving him the Donbass, that's going to stop the alliance between Russia and China? Is he not aware that China needs desperately two things from Russia? First and foremost is oil, and second is food, right? I mean, does he not realize that? Oh, yeah, sure. Simply, and by the way, if he doesn't agree and he doesn't do what we agreed to do, then we could re-engage. Really? Engage, re-engage, stop, re-engage, comment, discuss, and so on. How many more Ukrainian lives have to be lost? How many more Russian soldiers' lives have to be lost? So many of these Russian soldiers, you may remember that they were just giving up. They were running away. They were abandoning their tanks and their positions because they didn't even know what they were getting themselves into. They're soldiers who were deployed to Ukraine that turned around and said, I don't want to be in this war. I don't want to fight this war. What do you think is going to happen I have a friend who's very, very well knowledgeable in this area. His comment to me is that there's almost 100,000 Russian soldiers that have died as a result of this fight with Ukraine. You know how angry that's going to make the wives or the mothers of these Russian soldiers that are never coming back? Do you recall, Ben and Brigaders, that there were so many bodies, Russian bodies, right, that they brought out into the field, these mobile crematoriums, because there was no time within which to bury them? Could you imagine telling the families of these soldiers that Putin sent to fight Ukraine for some half-baked brained idea on trying to reassemble the former Soviet Union, and he's starting with Ukraine. Could you imagine how angry that these people are going to be?
How about this fact, Cohen, that in the entire Soviet war in Afghanistan, which lasted from around December of 1979 until February of 1989, about 15,000 Soviet soldiers were killed during the entire 10-year period. And already you have 10 times, perhaps even as many as 20 times as many Russian soldiers have been killed so far. I want to address this breaking.
That's the mobile crematorium.
I want to address this piece of.
Could you imagine that you're the spouse or the parent of a fallen soldier that you don't even get the opportunity to bury, to have some closure, to have a place to go to honor your child, your spouse? Right? Could you imagine how angry that these people are, how angry that they have every right to be? And I bring this up again because today, again, the 79th anniversary of D-Day. You know, this is all about democracy, and the fact that Trump can say the things that he says and do the things that he does, and there is still this 30% of the Republican Party that is so entrenched into this cult of Donald J. Trump. These folks need to have their heads examined.
Speaking of which, this is a bit of breaking news as we've been live on this podcast. A rare situation has taken place in the House of Representatives where the Republicans essentially voted against their own bill. At least 11 Republicans voted against the rules to debate their own bill about gas stove regulation. So the Republicans brought before the House of Representatives today a rules vote so they can start discussing a vote that they wanted to later have about legislation on gas stove regulations, because the MAGA Republicans created their own conspiracy theory that President Biden and Democrats are trying to take away gas stoves, which is simply false. So then they had to pass legislation. So this is actually the first time in over 20 years where a rule vote has failed in the House. And what the rule vote means is just even the vote to start debating to vote. And what happened is some of the MAGA Republicans who were part of the Freedom Caucus group wanted to punish Kevin McCarthy, to embarrass him for voting on the bipartisan debt ceiling bill. So they let Kevin McCarthy introduce the gas stove bill. Then they struck down his ability to even have the debate, to make McCarthy look like an idiot, which he already looked like an idiot because he wanted to debate a gas stove regulation. This is what happened moments ago on the House floor. Play this clip.
So once again, a rare situation we have here on the House floor now, where the majority doesn't have enough votes to approve the rules for debating their legislation. In this case, members are voting on a combined rule that would govern debate on 4 bills blocking gas stove regulations and changing the federal rulemaking process. The numbers have not changed for at least the past 10 minutes. 11 Republicans now have voted against essentially moving forward with debate on the legislation. All Democrats have also voted against it. Republican leaders have been on the floor, we understand, having discussions with their members. The House needs to approve this rule to debate the bills for the week, including the bill scheduled to come up next to block gas stove regulations. If the rule is defeated here, we could see the House go into recess to figure out what to do next.
And Democrats are responding to that. I'm going to play for you at least one of those responses. And of course, we also got to talk about special counsel Jack Smith. You talked about it a little bit earlier in today's episode about this incident where the maintenance worker at Mar-a-Lago drained the pool into the room where surveillance footage was being kept that was just subpoenaed by the Department of Justice. That happened in October of 2022. That and more. But first, let's take this quick break.
I have a big family, and that means there's usually a lot of trash left over by the time the work week comes to an end. And frankly, I used to feel a bit guilty about this, but then I got a Lomi. Now that I have a Lomi, it's changed the way I think about my food waste. First off, Lomi transforms my garbage into gold at the push of a button. Lomi's a countertop electric composter that turns food scraps to dirt in just under 4 hours. Now, I love composting, plus it's made cooking at home even more fun. There's no more food rotting in my garbage and smelling up the kitchen. Thanks to Lomi, I only have to take out the trash once a week, and it's a hassle-free, mess-free experience. No more leaking bags. Here's something cool too. I turn my waste into nutrient-rich dirt that I feed to my plants, lawn, or garden. That means it's not going to landfills and producing methane gas. I get to help the environment and make my life easier. And all the food scraps, plant clippings, and even those leftovers I forgot in the back of the fridge, they go back into my garden, helping me grow more nutritious food right from the backyard. I learned that food waste makes up a huge portion of our personal carbon footprint, and by reducing the amount of food that I send to a landfill, I'm helping to do my part for this planet while also feeding my garden. Now, whether you want to start making a positive environmental impact or just grow a beautiful garden, Lomi is perfect for you. Head to lomi.com/beat and use the promo code BEAT to get $50 off your Lomi. That's $50 off when you head to lomi.com/beat and use promo code BEAT at checkout. Thank you, Lomi, for sponsoring this.
We are back live here on Political
Look,
Beatdown. When
Ben,
we took the break, we talked about how these MAGA Republicans first introduced a bill about gas stoves, and then some MAGA Republicans voted against it to even approve the rules to debate it in order to embarrass Kevin McCarthy. Democratic Congressmember Jared Moskowitz just posted. First, he goes, "We need you, General Electric, to lead us into battle and save the war on gas stoves." And then Jared Moskowitz also posted, "Oh no, gas stoves put on the back burner." And this was Jared Moskowitz yesterday, Democratic Congressman, superstar, freshman from Florida. This is what Jared Moskowitz said yesterday when the MAGA Republicans talked about introducing this piece of legislation. Play this clip.
Obviously, we have one, not just one, but two gas stove bills. So my Second Amendment would give gas stoves, I think, the honor that they deserve. A stainless steel 6-burner double oven in Statuary Hall. We have statues there that are made of marble and bronze, but we don't have anything of stainless steel. And so I think this could be the first one. Amendment number 3 helps ensure that the hours of hard work do not go by the wayside on this issue. And so I propose creating a position in the U.S. Department of Energy for the sole purpose of fighting the war on gas stoves. This amendment would create this position in the department, the Supreme Allied Gas Commander, a position that young boys and girls can one day aspire to. Just as they're sitting in class, maybe reading a book, hopefully a book that wasn't banned, or sitting in class, hopefully being safe, they could think about being one day the Supreme Allied Gas Commander. Now switching over to H.R. 1615, this amendment honors this amendment by also changing its name to Make Appliances Great Again. Many of you already have the hats and shirts and flags and boats, so I figured we would just make it easy so that you could show your support for this amendment. And if you don't like that slogan, because that something of 4 years ago, my second amendment on that one changes the name to Stoves Over Gun Violence Act. In 2020, there were more than 40 million gas stoves, which is only about 10% of the amount of guns that are on the streets. And so I thought that maybe we could show parents really what our priority is, which is stoves over gun violence. And finally, Mr. Chairman, amendment number 5 to H.R. 1615, to kind of put us back on the right track, is this amendment would take all the funds that are being used for the purpose of this gas stove thing and redirect them for gun violence prevention efforts. So, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the committee considering my amendments. I yield back the balance of my time.
I mean, you can't make that stuff up. That is absolutely fantastic, right? Make appliances great again. It is so stupid. I mean, the fact that they are fighting over this. Now, whether you like Kevin McCarthy or not, you do have to acknowledge that he was assistive with President Biden in resolving this debt ceiling issue. All right. It was bipartisan. All right. Yes, Biden should get the accolades because if in fact it failed, he would be the one being ridiculed for it, but it didn't. So you have to give everybody that was involved in making this thing happen, in ensuring that America did not default, that our economy didn't go belly up. Kevin McCarthy should have gotten a round of applause for his participation in that. This whole bullshit on the stoves. I mean, seriously, you can't make this up. This is something like right out of South Park, and good for Moskowitz with his sense of humor, because that's really what it's so stupid that it's actually funny. But I want to just go back for one quick second, Ben, and go back to what just happened over at Mar-a-Lago, right? With the flooding of, the room that had the computers and so on into it. There's a great scene that was in, what do you call it? Succession. So Salty, if you have that clip, there it is. Drain the pool into where, right? I mean, everybody's now speculating that it was done on purpose. Here's the thing that Trump and his fools that surround him don't seem to understand. Just because you flood the server or whatever else it is, I promise you that our law enforcement, Quantico, I mean, we really have the best of the best, unless, of course, they ended up drowning the server in bleach or something that would destroy it. They will figure out how to get the information off of those servers as well. I mean, the notion that these servers were on the floor, not raised, makes no sense to me either. But look, remember who it is that you're dealing with. You're dealing with a guy with a very big brain, right? This is a guy who cognitively was able to pass all sorts of tests that nobody else could possibly test. Man, woman, child, camera, TV. I know it all. They asked. It's just amazing, right? This is the asshole that, could you imagine, is most probably going to be the Republican nominee. Shame on us. Shame on us as a country.
And the maintenance worker who we believe was the individual who drained the pool into the room where the surveillance footage was kept in October of 2022, right after another subpoena was issued for surveillance footage and a preservation request around October of 2022, is the same maintenance worker who was moving the boxes with one of Donald Trump's other employees, Walt Nauta, on June 2nd, the day before the Department of Justice top counterintelligence official arrived at Mar-a-Lago. And this was the same maintenance worker who, in or around July, was asking the IT people at Mar-a-Lago who control the surveillance footage, how the surveillance footage works. So there's a lot of data points connecting this maintenance worker from moving the boxes, asking the person who controls the surveillance footage how it works, and then draining the pool into the room. Special counsel Jack Smith is very much focused on that. And then we also learned about this other grand jury that has been impaneled in Southern Florida as well. We know about at least the two grand juries in Washington, D.C., one investigating Donald Trump's conduct relating to the January 6th insurrection and election interference, the other grand jury in Washington, D.C., about Donald Trump's theft of the thousands of government records and obstruction of justice. But another grand jury, this one in Southern Florida, doing a criminal investigation, special counsel Jack Smith and the feds presenting evidence there, also regarding Donald Trump's theft of documents and obstruction of justice. But what we're learning is the reason that there is a grand jury in Southern Florida is a jurisdictional reason. Still, the feds are the one who impaneled this grand jury, still in a federal courthouse, this one in the Southern District of Florida. But because it seems that a lot of the staff members at Mar-a-Lago who are represented by lawyers who are being paid for by Donald Trump's political action organizations, they're not cooperating and they're objecting on the basis of jurisdiction not to show up in Washington, D.C. We think that's the reason why special counsel Jack Smith and the DOJ were like, Okay, then we'll do a grand jury right next to you. So now it'll be more convenient for you to show up. And now you done pissed us off, and and you don't piss off the DOJ like that.
The funny thing is they're going to turn around and Jack Smith is going to ask Donald and his people, what happened here? How did the water end up in this one specific area? And he's going to turn around and he's going to tell you that what's his name? Colonel Mustard is responsible, right? Because while he was in the library, he hit the wrong on-off switch with the candlestick, which ultimately flooded out the room that contained the server. And he's going to say it with a straight face because he's so fucking insane that it is wild. I mean, the notion that they would do this now. I mean, look, we are all assuming that this is something that was done on purpose. There is a possibility that, the pool was improperly drained, and why this guy's I'm just trying to figure out why this maintenance worker at Mar-a-Lago was actually draining the pool. What was the purpose of it? Why would you drain the pool now? Is there a crack in the pool? Do they need to re-cement it? This isn't where you could say, oh, it needed, chlorine in order to shock the pool so people can, swim in it and it would be, safe and you wouldn't end up with some sort of a fungus or a bacteria, whatever, right? I'm curious to know why they were draining it in the first place. Nobody drains the pool during the summer. You drain it, right? At least here up north, you drain it after the summer so that you could prepare to close the pool. But there at Mar-a-Lago, it's never closed. So I'm curious, as to why they were doing it. I'm curious as to what happened. I'm curious whether or not this guy has ever done it ever before. I mean, there's so many questions that need to be answered here. And yes, we are poking fun at the fact, that there was this flood. I wonder how much he's going to put in insurance claiming for. We should all keep our eyes out for that one too, right? But, it's nonsensical to me that everything with Trump is about timing. And I can only imagine what's going to happen with this maintenance worker when U.S. government gets their paws on him and he's now facing under oath, having to swear that, this is what happened and so on. So I say this because, while it is fun to talk about because it is so absurd, we really don't know all the full facts of what happened. It is absurd that servers would be on the floor. It's absurd that this is the area that ended up getting flooded after a short period of time that they would require to turn over, the hard drives or copies of the hard drives. There's so many questions that need to be answered, but we definitely should allow the process to work out and be fair about it. Because it's not necessarily, this is not the end all be all, Ben, of what's going to end up being the ultimate beatdown of Donald in the eyes of the courts. All right. I mean, whether or not they have that additional documentation or not is irrelevant. I don't even understand the relevance. Personally, the fact of the matter is he had documents he was not authorized or permitted to have. He then turned around and told the government that they had returned them, all of them, which he did not. He had an attorney or two attorneys swear under oath that they searched and that they did a complete sweep and that there were no more documents. That turned out to be untrue as well. And then you have the raid, you have top secret documents, they find it. Now they have a recording showing that he was actually talking about it, knew that he should not have had it, that he could not show the document despite the fact that he was talking about the document and providing information, to somebody who was not authorized to receive that information. He knew he was not, president of the United States and that he could not declassify it simply by thinking it or just by having it. So he knew, exactly what he was doing was inappropriate, that it was illegal, but nevertheless, he did it anyway. So the fact that they don't have these videos of the server, truth be told, that's not going to stop Jack Smith from an indictment.
This is breaking right now from the New York Times. Among those who have appeared before special counsel's Washington grand jury in the past few months or have been subpoenaed by it, people familiar with the investigation said, are more than 20 members of Mr. Trump's Secret Service security detail as well. That is new information that we are learning here. Also, going back to what we reported earlier, how these MAGA Republicans basically embarrassed Kevin McCarthy because Kevin McCarthy voted to pass the debt ceiling bipartisan legislation. This is a report that just came out as well that 10 members of the so-called House Freedom Caucus will oppose all legislation that comes through the House until they get an agreement in writing from Kevin McCarthy to go back to the January agreement. And this was retweeted by Lauren Boebert. For those people watching, you can see up there that this is a Lauren Boebert retweet. And I guess she considers herself, even though her policies are completely against freedom, that's part of their gaslighting. So what seems that's going to happen now with this MAGA Republican infighting, because a bill was passed to prevent the destruction of our economy, as they're going to keep shooting down all of Kevin McCarthy's bills to embarrass him. So kind of the same way we saw Kevin McCarthy go through those 14 rounds where they voted against him from becoming speaker and he had to stand there each and every time. That is the present condition of the modern day Republican Party, engaging, incompetent, fascist, idiocracy. And you just compare that to someone like Democratic Congress member Jared Moskowitz, who is bright and diligent and focused on issues that matter. The Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries,
like Jamie Raskin, who did the same thing, blah, blah, blah. There's so many qualified Democrats that are, responding to the needs of America, and yet they're fighting with Republicans like the Lauren Boeberts, the Marjorie Toilet Greens, and so many others who just see the chaos as beneficial to themselves. And you know something, Ben? One of the big problems that I want to see come to an end, the reason that Donald is still getting the attention that he's getting is because, other than Alvin Bragg, nobody else has brought those indictments yet as against him. And again, I'm talking about criminally, not civilly. As you know, our unsinkable attorney general here in New York, Tish James, has, this case is coming up for trial very, very soon. This is enough already. He would not be in the position that he's in if these indictments started coming down one after the other, which is exactly what needs to happen. Why are we holding off? How much more information do you need? Do you need to cover every single improper, illegal action that he's done before which you bring the indictment? And I say the answer to that is fuck no. The answer is no. It's an emphatic no, no, no. There is more than enough information. There's more than enough documentary evidence. There's more than enough, sworn testimony that can be used in order to move forward expeditiously with this trial against Trump for the Mar-a-Lago documents, for the stolen documents, for the obstruction of justice, and so on. I mean, what are we doing? At some point in time, you don't have to get them on everything. And they make a big deal. Oh, now all of a sudden, they had a flood at Mar-a-Lago. Who gives a fuck? That case should have already been started. And if you need to bring a superseding indictment because something really super, pops up, or some new information that's really significant pops up, great. Then that's what they should do. But right now, just bring the fucking indictment already. Stop putzing around, because the more time that goes by that you don't bring the indictment, the closer we get to the election, which is when they're going to turn around, back off and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. It is unwritten policy that the DOJ will not do anything when it's within X number of days of an election. This is no good. And Donald is already trying that with my civil, with the lawsuit, the $500 million lawsuit. I mean, he's supposed to be deposed, believe it or not, at the end of the month. Clearly, he's not going to allow it. They're going to bring some sort of a protective order. He's going to do what he does well, super well. He is the master of the delay tactic. So the faster that we get this indictment going, right, the closer it will be to getting a trial before, right, the day, of election, or the time period that the DOJ determines that it's too close in order to, in order to bring the case, because you don't want it to affect the outcome of an election. I mean, this is why they need to move already. You have the info, work with it.
I love when Michael Cohen just throws in like a critical piece of breaking news and just like kind of buries it in an incredible rant that you've set Donald Trump's deposition for later this month. We knew that you were going to be asking for his deposition in the case, but you've now officially requested that Donald Trump be deposed before the end of the month. That's big news. So I just wanted to make sure that we all heard that, because I certainly heard that, and you're nodding yes. So I'm taking as that's what happened. Also, another piece of big news, special counsel Jack Smith was finally seen. We have him in that outfit where he was in The Hague, but like we've never seen the guy actually walking in Washington, D.C. An NBC News reporter caught him as he was walking into his office as things continue to heat up there. And I do want to make sure, though, that all the media is being very respectful of Jack Smith's safety, though, as well, with all of the hate being thrown his way by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. Donald Trump was evidently told by his lawyers that he should expect an indictment fairly soon, because we're seeing those exact same social media posts by Donald Trump that he made when he was about to be indicted by the Manhattan District Attorney. He basically just changes the name and like the disgusting thing that he calls the prosecutor. He called Alvin Bragg like animal scum or something, and he's calling here Jack Smith Marxist and fascist. So it's just plug and play the hate that he spews. So you could put that one up right there. The Marxist and fascist and the DOJ and FBI are going after me at a level and speed never seen before in our country, blah, 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 blah. Just a bunch of whining and complaining. And then finally, the timing is so important here, Cohen, as well, because you've got people like Jim Jordan in the Judiciary Committee and these MAGA Republicans now trying to interfere with special counsel Jack Smith's investigations. And again, it's like right out of their playbook. This is what they did right as the Manhattan District Attorney was about to indict. This is what they're doing as special counsel Jack Smith's about to indict. They're asking Merrick Garland, provide us all the information, give us the identities of all of the FBI officers, everybody on Jack Smith's team, because ultimately they want to dox those people and engage in the stochastic terrorism that they engage in. They have no ideas for the American people, right? They're not talking about jobs. They don't give a shit about our economy. They're not talking about Social Security and veterans. They're not protecting equality. They're not protecting seniors. They're not protecting students. They're not protecting the LGBTQ plus community. Quite the contrary. They are attacking all these marginalized groups as well. And all they know how to do is stochastic terrorism and perpetuating this idiocracy. Final word of the show for you, Michael Cohen.
The final word of the show, again, goes right back to accountability. All right. We all need to ensure that Donald Trump and his acolytes are held accountable for the multitude of things that are currently, confronting Trump as far as, the court system is concerned. And I want to thank each and every one of you for, your continued support. Thanks to you guys. And I still need more support to my GoFundMe. That's why we're going to be dealing and getting Donald's deposition. He could fight it all he wants. He is the plaintiff in the case. The plaintiff in the case is obligated to move the case forward. Now, he's going to want to keep, a gag order on this. That's not what I want. I believe in transparency. I believe that not only should my brigaders, of course, you'll be the first to know, but not only will my brigaders know what's going on, but the whole country should know. This is not just a matter of, Michael Cohen, Donald Trump. Oh, this is some sort of a conflict. This goes way bigger than that. And this is something of national importance. In fact, some could even make the argument that it's internationally important, because if this man somehow manages to get back into the Oval Office, democracy as we know it will not exist. And I don't say that to be hyperbolic. I say it because it's true, because I know the man better than anyone, and I know what he's looking to do. I know what he wants to do to this country. And all you need to do sometimes is look and listen to the words that come out of Donald's mouth, where he said, we need to rewrite the Constitution. Now, mind you, that was an off-the-cuff comment, because he's too stupid to just read off of the teleprompter. So he went off the cuff, and that's what he really wants to do. He wants to rewrite the Constitution so that he could remain in power ad infinitum, and then be able to pass it down as if this country is a monarchy, a dictatorship. And so that's not what we want. And that's why, again, we're going to all need to band together. Please share this show with your friends. We need millions of viewers, right? Millions of viewers. So that way, when we call a meeting to DC, so that our voices can be heard, so that we could ensure that when we do a call to action, that the brigaders are there front and center into the millions to ensure that that Donald never comes close to Washington D.C. ever again. Let him stay in in Mar-a-Lago. Let him stay in home confinement or wherever else that he's going to be. But as long as he's not in the Oval Office, that should be good for not just the country but for the world.
What I love about Political Beatdown is spending time with you, Michael Cohen, and the Brigaders, because Political Beatdown, like all of the other programs we have here on the MeidasTouch network, is not simply a show. It is a community, and the community is not possible without all of you watching, without all of you listening. This is a community of brigaders, pro-democracy brigaders who care about truth, who care about honesty and integrity and compassion and humanity, and calling out these bad actors, calling out these fascists, and using our voice to make a difference. So as Michael Cohen said, please share Political Beatdown with friends, family, coworkers, anybody you know. Post it on social media. Spread the word about this pro-democracy community. As Michael Cohen also referenced in the description of this YouTube page, we have the GoFundMe for the legal defense fund for Michael Cohen, set up by my good friend Adam Parkamenko and others in the pro-democracy community.
He's a friend of ours.
Friend of ours, absolutely. In the
a friend of mine or a friend of ours?
Friend of ours here in the pro-democracy community. So check out that link. Also check out Michael Cohen's book, wherever books and audiobooks are sold. Michael Cohen, Revenge: How Donald Trump Weaponized the U.S. Department of Justice Against His Critics. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. All of our YouTube viewers, make sure you subscribe to Political Beatdown wherever audio podcasts are available. Just search Political Beatdown and make sure you leave a 5-star review. To those who listen only on the audio podcast, subscribe to the MeidasTouch network as well. And you can also check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Later today, we're broadcasting this live on Tuesday, June 6th. So tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern, we are holding a Zoom meeting, me and my younger brothers, for all of our Patreon members, all of our patrons. So if you join the Patreon now, you'll get the Zoom link and you can meet me and my brothers and ask us questions later tonight. And we spend as much time as we can answering all of the questions. That's patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Also go to store.MeidasTouch.com for the best pro-democracy gear, including all of the official Michael Cohen gear, including the Mea Culpa podcast Mar-a-Lago Correctional Facility shirt. That's one of my favorite items at
Ben, can you imagine if there's like, can you imagine if we get to 1 million people and you have 1 million people wearing this shirt marching in Washington, D.C.? I mean, and this actually happens, right? That they finally end up holding him accountable for his dirty deeds. That would be great.
That would be great. We'll leave you with that. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by the one and only Michael Cohen. We'll see you next time, Brigaders, on Political Beatdown. Shout out to the Meidas Mighty.